pledge allegiance to the flag. Ms. Lawrence, can you please do the roll call?
Councilmember Fox.
Here.
Councilmember Price.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Bill De La Pena.
Present.
Mayor Irwin.
Here. Item number 4, request for continuance of any public hearing or agenda item. A consent item at 7G, the Transportation Center Parking Expansion Project Construction Contract Award, and Department Report 9B are both pulled off the agenda and will be rescheduled for a future date. And Department Report 9C, the Moore Park Transit Services, will be heard as the first department report prior to 9A. And that's because I think somebody has to get to another meeting. And we are on to item 5, special presentations and announcements. And I will be up at the podium in a moment. Our first presentation is recognizing the retirement of a longtime resident of Thousand Oaks who has generously dedicated her time and energy to helping those in need. I would like to ask Kathy Brunicki and John Prescott to join me, please. Welcome to both of you. And Kathy has been an employee of the Ventura County Homeless and Housing Coalition for 19 years. She has given countless hours helping to identify the homeless population as well as their needs. She has been a leader in working to make life a little better for those who need a helping hand. I would like to ask our Director of Community Development, John Prescott, to please talk a little bit about Kathy's accomplishments.
Thank you, Mayor Irwin. It really gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce Kathy tonight and to help the City Council honor her. Our staff in the Housing Division has worked very closely with Kathy and with our housing partners here in Thousand Oaks, the Area Housing Authority and Many Mansions, to address all the housing problems we have in the community, including homelessness. And the city has been able in the past to be helpful in that area, but I think it's because of the vision and leadership and guidance of somebody like Kathy, who has a mission and puts her mind to it, that we've been able to focus as much as we have, and that our housing partners have been able to focus as much as they have. So it gives me a lot of pleasure to help the city honor Kathy for great community service over many, many years. Thank you, Kathy.
I actually want to thank you because the foresight that this city has had has really paid off. You have a homeless population in the last count in January of 90 persons, and cities of similar size have homeless counts 3 or 4 times as many as that. And it's really been because of the partnerships that you've built and the planning that you've done and the collaboration and the funds that you've put into various projects that keeps your homeless population low. So congrats to you. The work's not done yet. We're about to update the 10-year strategy to end homelessness, and I'm sure I'll be back here talking to you as just a concerned citizen. So thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. And we have a commendation in honor of Kathy. I won't read everything because her accomplishments are many. And but I do want to say Kathy has been an incredible force in the county for the last 19 years, and we really appreciate the passion that she's had helping the homeless, not only in Thousand Oaks, but in the entire county. We will miss you. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for all your I'll be back.
I hope so. In just a little over 2 weeks, the Ventura County Fair will be opening, and every year at this time, the anticipation escalates for people of all ages because the fair has something for everybody. We have with us, I believe, no, We don't. We were going to have with us some Ventura County Fair Junior Board members, and they had a gift for us, but instead, Marty Lieberman, who is not a Junior Board member, apparently, is going to bring us a gift. And then you're going to be talking about the fair also? Sure. All right.
Face that way, right? Hello, everybody. Yes, I am pinch hitting. I handle the sponsorship program at the Ventura County Fair and other events. So anyway, that's I'm kind of pinch hitting since I live in Agoura Hills. But there's supposed to be 3 board members, Junior Fair board members, here to present the 2012 Fair poster, frame poster, and there was a lot of traffic coming out from Ventura today, so I'm sure that's what they're caught up in it. But here it is. Show it to everybody here. People from the Valley who are here saw it last night. This is for you. In that direction, there you go.
So we can get a close-up.
Right, the theme this year is rides, ribbons, and rodeos, and the fair starts on August 1st, runs through August 12th. Encourage everybody to come out and enjoy it if you haven't done so before. Just a little brief information on it. The first day is Dollar Day, so it's obviously $1 to get in on that day on Wednesday, August 1st. There's a Youth Day on Friday the 2nd. There's a Senior Day on Tuesday the 7th, Military Day on the 9th of August. Some of the entertainment this year, just I'll give some highlights. Martina McBride, Brett Michaels is going to be there. Frankie Avalon, probably appealed to a lot of people in this room. Sorry about that, myself included. On Senior Day. And Joan Jett and the Blackhearts on Saturday, August 4th, probably a good show. So anyway, there's something for everybody at the fair. We encourage everybody to come out. The Junior Livestock Auction, which is a big deal, and I'm sure that's what the Junior Fair Board folks would have talked about, is on Friday, August 10th. So that's it. Let me present this to you. This fair poster.
Let's take a picture.
Take a picture. Beautiful. Great.
Nice.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you very much.
For coming out.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you all.
And finally, one of our top priorities in Thousand Oaks is environmental protection. Tonight's final presentation shares with the residents the city's successful efforts to reduce traffic congestion and air pollution for everybody in the region. I will ask our associate analyst, Mike Hauser, to explain why Thousand Oaks was chosen for the Rideshare Diamond Award. Oh, Mike.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, every 2 years, the agencies of Ventura County Transportation Commission, Metro, and the Orange County Transportation Commission do surveys of ridership and participation in rideshare programs. With us this evening is Alan Holmes from the Ventura County Transportation Commission, who will talk a little bit about the award that the City of Thousand Oaks has received for the best AVR for 2011.
Thank you, Mr. Hauser. Good evening, everyone. Alan Holmes, Ventura County Transportation Commission. I run the rideshare programs for Ventura County employers. As Mike said, every year we recognize employers that lead the county in reducing air pollution and the associated traffic congestion. The measurement that we use is called average vehicle ridership, or AVR. AVR is the ratio of all employees in a rideshare program divided by the number of vehicles carrying those employees to work. Pretty simple calculation. On the 23rd of this year of May, we presented 4 Diamond Awards to Ventura County employers. Thousand Oaks, the city of, received the highest average vehicle ridership we measured in 2011, an AVR of 2.12. To give you a little comparison, the countywide average is 1.12, almost double. So I must congratulate the city on the efforts. The way this achievement was made was through trip reduction strategies, carpool, vanpools, preferential parking for employees of rideshare, compressed workweek programs, and an active ride matching program. Now, it's important to note that employers in Ventura County are not mandated to offer rideshare programs. The fact that the city offers such a dynamic program demonstrates the commitment to clean air and traffic congestion reduction. Excuse me. So I am very pleased to present the 2011 Diamond Award for highest average vehicle ridership.
All right, can I have the city clerk please announce public comments?
This is the time and place for public comments. A speaker card is available for those wishing to address the City Council regarding items on the agenda or on a subject within the city's jurisdiction. All remarks should be addressed to the council as a whole, and all documents for City Council and the official city record should be presented to the city clerk prior to speaking. Speakers are requested to state their name and community of residence for the record. Under state law, public comment matters may not be considered by the council unless listed on the agenda, but may be referred to the city manager for administrative follow-up. 2 people have presented cards, and pursuant to council standards, speakers are allowed 3 minutes. The yellow light displays when you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you, Ms. Lawrence. Our first speaker is Debbie Gregory.
CEO of Military Connection, and this weekend we will have the 20th anniversary of the Ventura County Stand Down. There are veterans in our community that are homeless. These are men and women who have served our nation. They have written a blank check so that we can have the freedoms that we enjoy and other countries can have them. We deserve to support them. It'll be in Ventura County. Claire Hope and Cal Farmer, her husband, have been doing this for 20 years. And we thank them very much, and we're proud to be a sponsor this year. Speaking of freedom, I wanted to talk about the Right to Vote initiative that you adopted last week. It's a shame that we even had to have it. It's a shame that Nick Ferris and hundreds of volunteers had to get over 10,000 signatures, because the right to vote in this country, in this city, was taken away from us. It was taken away from us by Mr. Fox and by Mrs. Irwin. They decided to appoint Mr. Price to 3 years of Mr. Gillette's 4-year terms, rather than letting us, the people, elect our own representative in November. This was purely political rhetoric. If you read the Acorn editorial, that's exactly what it was. It was keeping the power. Regardless of what Mrs. Irwin believes or I believe, we live in a democracy, and you don't manipulate it, and that's exactly what she did. I spoke to Mr. Price after the meeting. He said that he believed in the people's right to elect their officials, and I'm wondering, was it rhetoric or was it real? If it was real, Mr. Price, you should resign and run with everyone else, instead of being an illegitimate council member for 3 years. It's the right thing to do. If it's rhetoric, your actions will speak louder than words. Also, I wanted to talk about redevelopment. We've been dependent on it, and now we're not. And we see all kinds of cuts to the teen center, to the library, to volunteers in policing, to nonprofits, less hours, we're paying higher fees, and the East County Court. At the same time, while we're cutting all these services to residents, Mrs. Irwin approved lifetime health care for herself and her family. She may not be taking the full benefits this election year, but it's wrong. It's wrong, too, for a part-time job. The council's going on hiatus for almost 2 months. When they are here, they're here every other week, and they work about 9 months. Do you think that lifetime health care for an entire family should be paid by taxpayers? I don't. And I hope that we'll have a clean sweep. I want to thank Mick Ferris, who worked to bring the initiative so that we have the right to vote. I hope that Mick Ferris will run for office and we have a clean sweep. We get out the incumbents that took away our right to vote and prefer to give themselves benefits while they're cutting benefits to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gregory. Our next speaker is Mr. Nick Kidwai.
I begin in the name of God, who is most beneficial, most merciful. My name is Nick Iqbal Kidwai, resident of Newbury Park, and last time I checked, Dr. Glancy is not here, but he would smile. He's still Director of Concerned Citizens of Thousand Oaks since 1993. First of all, I would like to thank the people that called me or sent emails since I missed the last meeting due to personal reasons. I appreciate that. The only thing I don't like is that there are not enough people here willing to do this just for the love of the city. There are few, but they seem to come up supporting candidates and all that. That's not what patriotism is about, at least, but it's better than watching TV at home. If TOTV will help me as usual, I think I'm glad that the front monitor is working. Those are the flags of the European countries. I understand the council. There's more. Thank you. You folks are good, TOTV. Those are just some of the spots that the council and executive team will be able to enjoy in the European hiatus. They are paid enough. I just had talked to my neighbor just the other day, who's a successful businessman. He said, "Nick, I haven't had a vacation in 4 years." And that's the typical hardworking person that pays the bills. And that's a person that's not represented here because he doesn't pay enough donation. That's why I come back. Repetition is the mother of learning. That's the concerned citizen plan to save the city. 30% salary cut of people making, the executive team basically making over $150,000 a year. 30% cut in the perks so that you don't have these outrageous benefits. And thank you, Mr. Fox, for looking me in the eye. I really appreciate that. I don't like people reading. It's not a stare down, I hope. There's a stand down, I guess. Well, you have 8 weeks of no work. I mean, I sent the email. Since the city manager is hardly here, he gets, 45 days off or something like that. So the assistant city manager would also have the right to sign these things, etc., during the 8 months. I also have asked, and unless there's an attorney writing, there's no answer. Who are the 2 council members that could not be here next week and are already going on the European vacation so that the meeting could not be held next week? I mean, you cannot plan your vacation around this. I mean, it's disgusting that part-time people take their jobs so unseriously. And we are going backwards. I mean, it's a simple thing that the mayor won't even say the 2 names or 3 names that we started about 12 years ago. It helps move the meeting forward. And if the mayor forgets, that's fine. In fact, the city attorney and city manager don't belong on the dais. And if they're sitting there, they should be helping the mayor run the meeting and do these minor things. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Mr. Kidwai. And Linda McKenney, you would like to speak now? Okay. Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Irwin, council members, Mr. Mitnick, and staff. My name is Linda Beckany, and I'm here tonight representing Conejo Valley Unified School District. And I'm here tonight to speak on your consent agenda 7M, which is the acceptance of the 2012-13 beverage container recycling grant that was awarded to the city from the state of California. And this grant will provide recycling equipment and to all of our schools and outreach to all of our students. On behalf of the superintendent, Dr. Barstead, and our board of trustees, we would like to thank the city for again allowing us to partner with you, and as we've done on many occasions, and wanted to let you know that the district is excited and appreciative of the funding, and that we can start at the district, hopefully sustain a long-term recycling program within our school community. And we are committed to assuring the success of the program and hoping that with the continuing education of our students in our environmental studies. And last, I would just like to personally thank 3 staff members who worked closely with the district in securing the grant. They communicated with each of our site administrators. They even attended several of our custodial meetings and got buy-in from just about everybody as far as this recycling grant. And that would be Chris Ball, John Brooks, and Rod Cordova. Just want to let you know that we look forward to working with the city and working with these 3 gentlemen to get the program implemented. Thank you.
Thank you for coming this evening. We're on to item 7, consent calendar. Just a reminder, 7G is already pulled. Any other items? No? Can I have a motion? Oh, no, excuse me, I'm sorry. Mr. Kidwai.
Nick Iqbal Kidwai, resident of Newbury Park, speaking as Director Concerned Citizens of Thousand Oaks, Honorable Mayor, City Council. 7B, which is minutes. You don't have the minutes for the last meeting, and you have a 7-week, 8-week hiatus. I don't understand why the clerks don't have time to do that. With those minutes, I'll have to wait till that time. And I also, again, vehemently and opposed to these. And there was talk about the flag in America, that these minutes are completely un-American. They belong in Mr. Kim Jong-il's North Korea, where not even a position is mentioned of the citizens who are at the top of the org chart. And no one on the council even raises a finger to make a change. Number 7, which is the parking lot for the transportation center. This is the proverbial camel's nose in the tent that originally minuscule, small transportation center was approved to appease the residents who came in droves here against it, and I was not on their side because they were NIMBYs, but it was approved nonetheless, and now it's been just completely changed to what it should really have been done in the first place. It's just like reminds me of Hooters that did not have a hearing, did not have any council member put it on the agenda. They opened up, and I was able to talk to the manager, and he said, we'll get the liquor license next year when things are a little bit cooler. I mean, this is absolutely disgusting that the will of the residents is ignored. Wake up, residents. Your government works against you almost always in this town. Number 7G, I'm enjoying that fellow redevelopment opponent, Paul Burns of Burns Pacific, is going to make some money from the city, and he's up for approval. So that shows that the city is not really vindictive all the time and will approve contracts even if you are opposed to them. Number 7O, I already talked partially about it, is the European summer hiatus. I mean, people like me do not deserve an answer, I guess. This is part of your green packet. I said also, is Mr. Mitnick going to be on vacation too, and the assistant manager is going to run the city? And if so, for how many days, how many weeks, or for the whole 7 weeks? I mean, citizens deserve an answer. I mean, I think I've said enough. I'll yield the 17 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Kidwai. I actually am going to pull 7F. So can I have a motion to the rest of the consent calendar? Still no opinion?
Move approval of the remainder of the consent calendar.
Vote, please.
The motion carries 4-0, and I have some ordinance titles to read. Item 7P is an ordinance affirming ordinance numbers 1567 NS and 1215 NS regarding levying of special taxes within Community Facilities District number 1994-1, Marketplace Public Pedestrian Traffic Circulation and Parking Facilities. Item 7Q is an ordinance amending sections 6-1.100, 105, 106, 107, and adding sections 6-1.108, 109, and 110 of the Municipal Code regarding adoption of Title 10 of Los Angeles County Code with associated local amendments as it relates to animal regulations. And Ordinance 7R is an ordinance adopting Title I, Chapter 15 of Thousand Oaks Municipal Code, adding special election to fill council vacancies.
Thank you, Ms. Lawrence. I pulled 7F because I think it really should have been a department report. It's a very significant amount of money, so I'm hoping Mr. Spurgeon can give an abbreviated report on this.
Yes, Mayor Irwin, I'd be happy to do that. I do have a few slides. This project is for approval of construction and related contracts for our Municipal Service Center expansion project. The existing Municipal Service Center is located at the end of Rancho Conejo Boulevard in the Newbury Park Industrial area, and this slide shows you the existing site, developed site, and then the adjacent 3.3-acre parcel that was purchased several years ago for use in expanding our facility there. This project includes basically 3 elements. The first is a household hazardous waste permanent facility that will be located at the southerly half of this adjacent parcel. Next to it, to the north, is permanent or a new CNG, compressed natural gas fueling stations and parking area for our transit buses. And then the third element is a training facility that will be expanded off of the existing administration building. This project has been in the planning or design phases for a number of years, as you can see, starting with the purchase of the vacant land in 2006, a few years ago. And then with recent bidding and of the project a few months ago, we're ready to now award contracts and begin construction, which will take just over a year in length. An artist rendering of the household hazardous waste facility here. This will be a very nice facility that will allow residents to drop off materials in an environmentally friendly manner. We have a little awning here, so in inclement weather also can be convenient for folks to drop off materials. Currently what we do is one Saturday a month we set up essentially a hazardous material receiving facility at our MSC. It takes hours and hours of contractor and staff time to do that. It's set up and torn down the same day, and all kinds of equipment and vehicles have to be moved out of the way. Essentially, though, we are at capacity. We cannot, on this temporary basis, we cannot add any days in the month. We're restricted to one day a month, and we have essentially no more room to expand at our existing facility to accommodate more residents. We had over 500 show up at our last facility. We are at capacity, and this is something that we've been planning and received some grant funding for, and this will really provide for more opportunity for our residents to drop off their materials that need to be dropped off and recycled in a safe manner. The second component is refueling stations for our compressed natural gas, clean air buses. There's 10 stations. The canopies were originally intended to be part of the construction. These will actually be eliminated as part of the change order. That's part of this item tonight. That's to reduce the project cost within budget. We can include those canopies and the solar panel components at a future date once, should we get additional funding, grant funding for that. Essentially, similar to HHW, we're running out of room at our MSC. The buses currently, essentially, where they park and refuel now, they're just in the way. And the need for additional operating room at the MSC will be realized from this component of the project. And then finally, about a 1,900 square foot addition for a training facility. Currently, in order to have an all-hands meeting or even most of the MSC staff to have a training seminar or a meeting, we have to shut down the fleet operations, clear out the vehicles and equipment and tools, and set up chairs, and then take it down at the end. It's very inefficient, obviously. Our current training room, meeting room there can accommodate barely half of our staff there, especially when we have off-site people join us. And as we go forward in time, one of the solutions to doing more with less is increasing our technology. And we've done that, and we will continue to do that. And our staff, especially the maintenance workers that make up most of the MSC, they need training to be able to use those technological tools, and this facility will provide us with that opportunity. Here's here's a summary of the project costs. There will be some nominal increase in O&M costs from the new facilities, as you can see here, for the bus parking and annex, the training facility. Although for the household hazardous waste facility, we'll actually reduce our ongoing cost by a little over $60,000. I believe we have in the construction phase about $325,000 of general fund monies that are needed for the project, so it's a very low amount in terms of the overall cost of the project. So,
thank you for that update, Mr. Spurgeon. I will move item 7F. Vote, please.
The motion carries 4-0.
All right, we are moving item 9C ahead because we have people that have to leave, but I do want to remind our staff that we have a lot of distinguished guests here in the audience, so if we can move it along, that would be really helpful. So Mr. Spurgeon is going to give the department a report on the proposal for the city to provide Moorpark transit services. Good evening,
Yes.
Mr. Spurgeon again.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Irwin. It's really exciting to come before you with this item. We have agreements for your approval for the City of Thousand Oaks to provide transit services to the City of Moorpark. And the need for this arose fairly suddenly, actually in just a matter of weeks ago, with the bankruptcy of the contractor that had been providing transit services for Moorpark. This is the same contractor that was providing countywide Vista bus services through Ventura County Transportation Commission. The City of Moorpark reacted very quickly in terms of preparing and issuing a request for proposals. They reviewed the proposals and started negotiations with the city. I really appreciate the cooperative approach. Public Works staff in both cities to get this done. It's taken a lot of effort. This is really the kind of collaboration that we need to do moving forward. It's a regional approach to providing this essential public service. This is exactly what the countywide transportation plan envisioned. It's a great first step toward consolidating and becoming more efficient in terms of transit services in the East County and sharing our limited resources. We've done this before. The city has contracted with this, Westlake Village and the county to provide transit services for Oak Park and our unincorporated islands. So this is not completely new to us in terms of sharing resources and providing transit services for sister agencies. Moorpark City Council will consider this item tomorrow night. And tonight with us is David Klotzel, the Moorpark Public Works Director. He'll be available for questions later. And our transit manager, Mike Hauser, will continue briefly and go through some of the details on the agreements. So, Mike.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, as the Public Works Director has mentioned, this was a very rapid response to this issue. Moorpark was notified on June 12th of the need to find a replacement service provider. Staff got together immediately with them, offered up whatever emergency services they might need, and then we proceeded on. Moorpark was able to get a 1-month extension of the current agreement with Coach USA. That was followed up almost immediately with a release for proposals, which the city responded to less than 2 weeks later. And in a matter of approximately 4 days from the time we submitted the proposal, we had an agreement in principle and it was basically negotiated at the staff level with input from the Public Works Directors. A comparison of the two services, Thousand Oaks Transit currently provides nearly 90,000 dial-a-rides annually. That's for senior dial-a-ride and ADA paratransit service. We currently have 19 vehicles. We carry approximately 180,000 bus passengers with 7 buses and 4 routes. The Moorpark Transit service is less than 3,000 dial-a-rides, so that represents about 3% of our total capacity. They utilize 1 dial-a-ride vehicle. They carry approximately a third of the number of passengers are on their bus service. They have 2 routes equipped with 5 buses. As mentioned before, we currently have 2 existing agreements that have worked very well for both the city and the county and the city of Westlake Village. We brought both of these services on through the cooperation of MV Transportation using our existing transit contract, and to date we've experienced no issues whatsoever, and both agencies are very happy with not only the quality of the work but also the price as well. Some of the highlights of the agreement: this agreement calls for, as previous agreements, calls for full cost recovery. There will be no Thousand Oaks subsidy of the services. Our current service levels will be maintained. It is for a relatively short term of 23 months. MV has agreed to pick up this service just like the others under our existing contract. Moorpark will retain their separate identity for the bus service, but Thousand Oaks operating rules in general will apply to the service. Several benefits of this type of cooperative program. First and foremost is we run very similar types of services, so for us to integrate this is not going to be a very difficult task at all. Thousand Oaks and Moorpark share some of the same federal funding. This also expands our cooperation and coordination. This is one of the key elements of the proposed regional transit plan, which has been supported by this council and other agencies. It moves the East County closer to our goal of a single dial-a-ride and ADA service area for the entire East County instead of having 4 separate agencies provide the service, which will improve service for the residents who use the service and should also reduce the operating costs. And this will be a possible first step to a formal consolidation of services at a later date. There are, however, some risks that go along with this. This is particularly for the bus service, this is an untried thing. We haven't done this yet before. We've been very successful for the dial-a-ride. But MV is bringing on extra staff during the transition. MV will be offering, they are going to be interviewing and hopefully hiring all the existing Coach USA bus drivers. We also have no maintenance history on these buses, so one of the things that we included as part of the conditions of the agreement was the opportunity to thoroughly inspect these vehicles and have all of the deficiencies corrected prior to them being brought on service. And lastly, it is going to be an increase in the number of vehicles overall that the fleet staff is going to have to maintain. However, it is within our existing capacity, and we already had plans to add a capacity into the fleet shop even before this situation arose. I think it's important for the council to know that this, even though this agreement has come about in a relatively short period of time, this is a process and a discussion that the staff at the staff level has been going on for at least 2 years about the possibility of something like this occurring. So the groundwork was laid a long time ago. As we move forward, we're going to be working towards the East County MOU, which is going to include a unified eligibility age, fares, operating hours. We're going to coordinate the implementation of Saturday bus service when we're both ready to do that. It could mean the possible expansion of our dial-a-ride service area sooner rather than later, and other consolidations and shared resources. And with that, staff is available for any questions. I would direct council's attention to your green packet, which includes drafts of the 3 separate agreements that would be signed under this arrangement, as well as the budget information that goes with that.
Thank you, Mr. Hauser. Questions of staff? Mayor Pro Tem Bill De La Pena.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Hauser. Just a quick question regarding our own operator, MV. You say that some of the other bus drivers will be basically rehired and by MV. Do we know how many?
That is correct. So currently, they operate with 3 bus drivers and 1 dial-a-ride driver, and we are encouraging all those employees to apply. And so long as they can pass MV's criteria, they will be hired. And I'm sure that the MV general manager can speak to the specifics of the how that process takes place.
Thank you. That's all.
Councilmember Price.
Thank you. Just one question in regards to the dial-a-ride services. So will they be able to go between the 2 cities then, people who use that service now, or not? Is it?
Currently, for the ADA service, we do have an intercity agreement, so people that are under the ADA service do travel between communities. For the senior dial-a-ride, it is still currently limited to our existing service areas, but that's a discussion that we will have, and we will bring that back at a later date.
All right, we have 3 speakers. Our first speaker is Dave Klotzel. He's the Public Works Director from the City of Moorpark. Good evening.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, council members, city staff. As I was introduced, Dave Klotzel, City Engineer and Public Works Director at the City of Moorpark. City of Moorpark really appreciates you considering this item tonight. As was mentioned, in mid-June, we found ourselves in the predicament of our current transit operator who had filed bankruptcy, notifying us that as of August 1st, they would no longer be operating our buses or dial-a-ride vehicles. Hence, my staff has been scrambling to obtain and secure the services of a new operator for Moore Park City Transit. As mentioned in your staff's report, some groundwork has been laid over the recent years, and I just would like to recognize and commend your staff, namely Mike Hauser, and my entire transit staff of one, namely Sean Cruz, who, in addition to transit, manages our entire stormwater program. They've been working diligently to get us to where we are tonight, and that is with a collaborative effort between neighboring cities to continue the excellent level of services that our customers are used to. And also, as mentioned, this is an important right step in the right direction in the East Ventura County cities in working together to implement an improved transit system to better connect our cities and serve our customers. And this is a specific goal identified in the recent regional transit study report. So with that, to be brief, I just conclude by saying that the City of Moore Park, myself, and my staff look forward to partnering with the City of Thousand Oaks for providing Moore Park City transit services. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Cheryl Seifert. And Ms. Seifert is from MV Transportation.
Good evening. I am the general manager for MV Transportation. I've been there for 2 years, and I've worked with Mike Hauser regarding the Moore Park contract, looking over the details of it, and we are fully able and capable of starting the transition immediately and implementing it on the start date. Do you have any questions?
Questions? Ms. Bill de la Pena?
Yes, good evening. I was just wondering whether you would be able to answer the question I asked earlier this evening regarding the drivers, rehiring some of the drivers, and how many drivers would MV have to hire in order to fulfill the obligations under the contract?
We've reached out to the drivers. Only 2 of them have contacted us at this time, but we also, in anticipation of this startup, hired 2 drivers, and they're going through the training program right now. So we expect to be fully staffed when it starts.
When you say fully staffed, how many staff members is that?
4 drivers.
4, okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Seifert. And our last speaker is David Shane. Oh, okay, you're on 9A, okay. All right. Do we have any comments, questions of staff? Councilmember Bill de la Pena.
Move approval
Right.
of staff recommendation.
Any comments? Vote, please.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. Item 9A, East County Courthouse funding. Mark Watkins, our Assistant City Manager, is going to be presenting the report. Mr. Watkins.
Thank you, Mayor Irwin, members of the council, members of the public that are here. The next item for council's consideration is an East County Courthouse funding proposal. Due to the state budget cuts, courts across the state are coping with decreased funding. Ventura County reductions have exceeded $10 million, and because of that, they're forced to looking at the closure of the East County Courthouse. This not only impacts those who rely on and live near the East County Courthouse, but all of Ventura County because of the shift in the caseload from the East County Courthouse to the courts at the Ventura County Government Center. We all have respect for the courts and the role that they play, and indeed, as the third branch of government, and the basic issue, therefore, is access and fair access to justice. Due to these concerns, there was an effort to keep the courthouse open, which has been spearheaded by the city of Simi Valley. And those efforts led to discussions between the various agencies and the courts that resulted in a proposal that was developed to keep the courts open for 2 days per week at $275,000 per year. Those funds were prorated amongst the various cities as shown in the staff report, with the Thousand Oaks share being $65,000 a year for the next 2 years. In order for this to work, all of the cities need to agree to put in those funds, or that proration obviously would have to change. In accordance with that formula, so far, Simi Valley has agreed to contribute $75,000 a year. Ventura County has agreed to contribute $50,000 a year, and the city of Camarillo denied their request at $15,000 a year. Thousand Oaks is obviously considering this evening, and tomorrow night the city of Moore Park will consider their request. At this point, Moore Park, the staff recommendation is for $25,000 per year. Oxnard and Ventura, the two other large cities that are included, have at this point not scheduled their items for their city councils. Ventura has indicated that if all of the other cities were on board, they would be willing to at least consider the request. Moore Park, in their staff report, includes a similar caveat saying that their funding would be included, presuming that everybody else agreed to participate. Unfortunately for Thousand Oaks, this request comes during a very difficult budget time. As City Council is well aware, we've seen decreased and rescinded revenues, including those due to redevelopment, the vehicle license fees, and library cuts. Recently, City Council has cut budgets to police, public works, community development, and redevelopment, the libraries, for a total of 93 positions, including 11 additional positions that were cut just this June 26th that resulted in additional layoffs. We do have a projected deficit going forward, and quite frankly, we do fear further state cuts. That being said, we do also agree with the need to keep the county courthouse open. We value the services that the courts provide, and we feel that we should be working cooperatively with the other agencies to keep the courts open. Staff does not, however, believe that the city should be stepping into the state's shoes to assume their fiscal obligations. We do agree that we should be working and dedicating city resources, including city staff and city lobbyists, in the effort to keep it open, but staff's recommendation for council is to deny the request for funding, direct staff to work to find state funding to keep the courts open. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Watkins. Mr. Fox?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mark, on page 6 of the report, attachment 1 is an email from Mr. Siddell, who the former city manager of the city of Simi Valley, and outlines this whole issue. About the third paragraph down, he talks about a formula that apparently is done through the state courts, not the legislature, that they're looking at changing, that would provide sufficient funding for the court, at least in whole or in part, to stay open. Can you explain to the council a little bit more about how that works?
Actually, Mr. Siddell is here. I may let him explain it, but I can tell you on the basics are that the trial court funding is allocated based upon a formula that is determined by the courts, and Ventura County is receiving what we believe is less than their fair share. So based on court load, based on population, we think we should be receiving a greater share of that. The uphill battle in changing that funding formula, of course, is that it's a single pie and a zero-sum game, so that to the extent we're receiving extra funds, somebody else is going to be receiving less, and there are other courthouses closing throughout the state.
That was going to be really my question. Is
right.
It's, in reading it, it's my understanding that it is a single pie, so to speak, and so if you cut a bigger slice for Ventura County, somebody else is going to do with that. At least that's my understanding, but I'll ask Mr. Siddell. I'm sure he's going to speak later.
That's correct.
All right, thanks very much.
Councilmember Bill De La Pena?
Well, I do have questions, maybe not necessarily of staff, but perhaps staff could begin to fill us in. Obviously, Thousand Oaks is not the only city facing financial challenges. All of the other cities who have committed to participating and sharing the cost have their own financial problems as well. And my question is, do you know, have you heard from the other cities how they are paying for this?
Well, again, I know that the former Simi Valley city manager is here, and he can speak to how Simi Valley funded it. For Moore Park, the request came, similar as it does to Thousand Oaks, after they had already balanced their budget for this fiscal year. So what Moore Park chose to do on a one-time basis is recommend that those funds come out of their general fund reserves. So they did not budget it within their budget. They recommended taking it out of reserves. Camarillo obviously denied the request, and then the other cities besides us haven't considered it yet.
What would the impact be if the courthouse were to be closed? What would happen?
Well, our understanding is several things will happen. One, of course, just purely geographically, Thousand Oaks is somewhat split. For some of our residents, it's just as close to go to Ventura. For others, it's much closer to go to Simi Valley. But I think really part of the impact is the fact that there's a number of, the number I read, 17,000 cases, I think, being heard through Simi Valley that will now be transferred to Ventura. And so you've got to get all of those cases through the Ventura County courts. And so geographically, for some people, it's further. And then also there's a concern over just the court or case loading at the Ventura County Government Center.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Really two questions. The first is, are the judges from, if the courthouse is closed, are there additional courtrooms in Ventura that the judges would move to?
You know, I will let the judges answer that question. I think we've also got the Chief Executive Officer of the county courts here, and he can answer that question.
Okay, and then I was wondering if we could just get a kind of a brief statement from the police chief on what he feels the impact to TOPD would be.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, good evening. With the majority of traffic court cases going to Simi, as the assistant city manager pointed out, these number of cases would now go to Ventura. And as far as the backlog and overwhelming the system at that end, I'll let the court administrative officer speak to that. But it would cause us, primarily our traffic bureau, to go to Ventura to have their traffic cases heard.
And how much, I mean, what would you say the financial cost of that would be? Or do you have some guess on that?
I'm not going to guess at the financial cost. There would be a cost, of course. There's a travel cost. There's a cost of having our officers out of the city and in Ventura traffic cases. So yes, there would be a cost.
Right. Okay. Any other questions? Councilmember Price?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chief, would it be fair to say that that cost would be minimal in that officers who are going to court in Simi Valley will spend about the same amount of time in the court in Ventura? Now, there might be some additional travel time, but the other costs are going to be about the same?
It is minimal. The driving time and the mileage isn't that great of a difference, especially from our officers driving from the Newberry Park area of Thousand Oaks, traveling to Simi, and that same distance going to Ventura. It is longer, yes, but it's not that significant.
And if I may, historically, you probably don't have any data with you, I'm sure you don't, but the amount of, the number of citations that are written that end up going to court. We heard the figure of 17,000 put out there, and that's the total. But I'm wondering what portion of that might be from Thousand Oaks. Do you have any idea?
I do not. Not between other large cities, Simi, the city of Oxnard, the California Highway Patrol. I don't have a breakdown of that.
Thank you.
All right. And if there's no more questions, we have some public speakers. A lot of public speakers, and we are starting with our Honorable Supervisor, Peter Foy, and he will be followed by Vince O'Neill. Good evening, Mr. Foy.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council, Mr. Mitnick, and Ms. Noonan. Appreciate the opportunity to be here on a very, very, we believe, important item. And keeping the courthouse open is a critical issue. There's just no question about that. The service to our residents, I think that's a key thing for all of us. I know you were all elected, and the rest of you serve to this residents. One of the things that we've heard is that we're bailing out the state. That is an issue that I don't believe in. There's no question about it. I know none of you do either. But that's not what we're here to do. Just because the state has failed us doesn't mean that we have to fail the residents of Ventura County. And that's a critical issue here, because we are failing those residents if we do not give them what is critical, which is access to justice. And that's what we're doing here. The state is in a mess. There's no question. Your city has been able to manage and find a way to balance their budgets. Other cities in this county have done the same thing. The state hasn't done that. But that doesn't mean that we don't have an obligation and a duty. We were elected We are tasked to do that kind of thing, to make sure that we have the right services here for the people. And access to justice is that service to the individual, to the business owner who needs to get to the courts, who needs to have time to be at the courts. We cannot be in a position that we allow the courts to back up, as was said, that backlog, everything else. That's important for all of us. That is a core of what government does. That is a core of what these people pay taxes for, is to ensure that we do that. Yeah, this is not something that we're here to say that the City of Thousand Oaks, the City of Oxnard, the City of Simi Valley, Moore Park, Ventura, or the county is here to support forever. What we are looking for is an opportunity for all of us to come together as a community, as a county, to serve the almost 850,000 people that live in this county and provide that opportunity as we try to work through solutions in Sacramento. Now, there is other opportunities. I'm going to have Mike Siddell talk about some of those solutions in Sacramento so that it doesn't become a zero-sum game, because I agree with you. There is that. But there's also evidence in this county of zero-sum games being changed, where things have adjusted to ensure that the right was done. And we agree. We think there's more money that needs to be provided for our courts. But there's also an important piece that we as a community come together. That's why we as the county and unanimously as supervisors voted to put a little bit of money to do this. The county's also done some other things to help the courts. $170,000 additional dollars they've come to reduce their cost to the courts. Because, again, we believe it's important that we provide access to justice. And you're going to have a lot of people here talk about different ways that it affects them, besides just what we talked here from the chief, traffic. There's a lot of other things that are there. So I'm going to let the people that expertly talk about how it is affected. And I thank you for the time, and thank you for giving us this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor Foy. Next speaker is Vince O'Neill. Mr. O'Neill, are you the person to ask about if the courthouse is closed, whether the judges would be moving over to Ventura?
Yes.
Okay. So maybe you can finish up with that then.
Be happy to. Mayor Irwin, members of the council, I am Vincent O'Neill, the presiding judge of the Ventura Superior Court. I'm in the second year of a 2-year term as presiding judge and my 20th year on the bench here in Ventura County. I'm joined tonight, I'd like to note, by Assistant Presiding Judge Brian Back and our 2 most recent past presiding judges, Colleen Toy White and Kevin McGee. Also present is Michael Planet, our court executive officer, and he'll be the one that hits me upside the head if I get anything wrong here on the details. When I became a judge, I did not expect I would ever be addressing you or any other local elected body on the subject of funding for the court. On the other hand, because the Superior Court's jurisdiction is defined by the county boundaries, we are, in a very real sense, a provider of services to the local communities and citizens. You know that the powers that be in Sacramento have enacted unprecedented cuts to the court system budget, as summarized in what I consider to be a well-done staff report. My compliments, both in the written and oral comments here, in terms of the factual aspects. However, the decision to close these county courthouses is a local one, just like all of our Ventura County Superior Court decisions are. They give us the dollars, and we do the best we can with those dollars. We've made the reluctant decision to close the East County Courthouse, at least the proposal to do so, on the recommendation of our executive staff and after consultation with all the judges of our court. Every one of those judges lives in Ventura County, and all are committed to serving our neighbors throughout the county. Because the number of staff needed to support each operating courtroom is at a certain level, especially in a full-service standalone branch court like East County, we had no other option at a certain point but to centralize operations to the extent we can in Ventura once the last round of budget cuts and layoffs became a reality a few weeks ago. And yes, we do have room for the bench officers. We've moved 3 of them already to Ventura. And the question before you and the ad hoc committee that's been working on this is, can we keep our 1 commissioner going in courtroom S1 handling several thousand traffic infractions, small claims cases, and landlord-tenant matters each year. As you can imagine, these types of cases are best handled close to where they arise for the benefit of all involved, whether a self-represented party or witness missing work, an attorney trying to keep costs down for a client, or a police officer who's either being paid overtime or taking time out of a work shift to appear. Small claims cases.
I know I asked you a question, so you can finish up what you have.
Okay, it'll be fairly brief. Small claims cases occasionally benefit from a field trip by the judge or commissioner before they can properly be decided. So the result of the ad hoc committee is a workable plan, fairly modest cost that would allow us to keep courtroom S1 open 2 days a week, a reduction of only 1 day from the former 3-day schedule for the commissioner in that courtroom. The Sheriff's Department has separate state funding for security in the courtroom. The court is separately funded by the state for costs of building entry screening, a benefit to all the tenants in the building and all the citizens who come and go there. We're asking for funding for 40% of the commissioner and supporting staff, which would need to come from local sources for no longer than 2 years. There's a number of practical benefits as we see it. In addition to the case categories I mentioned, we'll be able to handle many emergency restraining orders, specifically elder abuse, workplace violence, and harassment. We will accept delivery of all papers on all cases at that courthouse, saving costs to family law and civil litigants and attorneys from driving to Ventura simply to drop off papers. Annually, there will be thousands less people in cars on the 101 freeway and Route 118. We think thousands of hours of police officer time will be spent on duty in the East County instead of commuting to Ventura, with financial and safety benefits. And one of the spin-off benefits here is we're reducing, by compacting the calendars to 2 days, we end up with a single day when the traffic cases are heard. And we think that will help planning for the police agencies to know that at least that is the day, to the extent that their case is going to be heard in the East End, they can plan on Tuesday. Whereas if it's all shifted to Ventura, the traffic calendars are scattered throughout the week in different courtrooms virtually every day in Ventura, and may end up, some of which may end up overflowing over to the juvenile complex on Vineyard. Last but not least, there's the symbolic and intrinsic value of access to the justice system in the East County, as documented by some sixth graders who visited recently. One wrote back to us, "I am a sixth grader that had a field trip at the courthouse, and it was the best field trip of all the ones I have been to. I thought that it was going to be boring, but it was great." And they are very precocious out there. They seem to be aware of current events. Another one wrote, "I had a great time visiting the courthouse. I believe the next generation of sixth graders would also like to experience the same thing. I hope this note helps, so please don't close." I don't know about you, but I think the next generation of sixth graders means a month or so from now in August when school starts. There's an opportunity here, I think, to accomplish a creative, one-of-a-kind solution that will reflect well on all the government entities who participate. And on behalf of the Ventura County Bench, we would be grateful to this council for helping us continue to serve our mutual constituents on the east end of the county. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the judge? Nope. Thank you. Our next speaker is Bob Huber, the mayor of Simi Valley, and he will be followed by John, can't quite read that, from the CHP. Good evening, Mr. Huber.
Good evening, Mayor Irwin and members of the City Council. I appreciate being able here tonight to address an issue that our City Council believes is of utmost regional importance, and one that requires our local general purpose governments in Ventura County to work together to finance a bridge to the future of our court system. Without our mutual participation in this endeavor, the East County Courthouse will be shuttered and over 17,000 cases annually, along with their associated filings, will be transferred to the Ventura Courthouse. In addition, there will be further layoffs of personnel at the Ventura Courthouse and the resulting reduction of services and hours of service. The result of all this will be a significant impact not just on our city and county government entities, but on our citizens and their unfettered access to justice as well. While those of us here in the East County area will feel the greatest impacts from this closure, our colleagues from throughout the county will feel it as well due to the backlog of cases and filings that will result in Ventura. While we recognize that this issue is the result of the state's budget cuts to the courts, and the state has additionally cut our respective city and county funding drastically also, we believe that we cannot stand idly by while our citizens suffer the brunt of the East County Courthouse closure when there is something that we can all do about it. Working together, local governments and the Ventura courts have come up with a 2-year funding gap closure plan, the plan that you are considering this evening, which can significantly lessen the overcrowding of the Ventura Courthouse by keeping the East County Courthouse open 2 days per week. Additionally, we are seeking further funding from the state court system to fund an additional day, a decision that will not, however, come until late August. Our city has worked with Thousand Oaks on many regional issues where benefits and costs went beyond our local borders. We have assisted Thousand Oaks in the past in lobbying in Washington, D.C., and with CalTrans for funding for the 101 and 23 freeways, as well as for the funding for the interchange between them. We have stepped up for you when RENA numbers have been discussed and have agreed to accept higher numbers to protect your concerns. When library funding was discussed in the Library Commission meetings, our city was there supporting your position. When Camarillo sought funding for the BRAC process, we were there with the county and other cities, even though we were the least impacted. We would hope that your city council will continue to recognize the value of regional partnerships in best serving our mutual constituencies when it comes to access to justice. Please also keep in mind that this request is limited to a maximum of 2 years. Discussions have already begun in Sacramento to ensure that at the end of that time, a more equitable distribution of statewide trial funding will be in place, and the Ventura County will not be relegated, I'm almost done, will not be relegated to less than 2% of that funding, and the largest number of residents per courthouse in the state is what we are now threatened with. To simply ignore this request and suggest that the issue be referred to as a legislative remedy is unrealistic at best. We have already begun discussions in Sacramento, and we are all too aware a state budget has already been adopted. As you also know, there are only 3 legislative weeks in August for this calendar year, which will present virtually no legislative relief as a possibility. Bridge funding is critical to achieve our goal, for as we know, once the East County Courthouse is closed, it likely will never reopen. We ask your help and support as we work together towards regional solutions to regional issues. Also, I spoke at length with Mayor Janice Parvin today. As you know, we've in the last 2 years had a regional approach to our discussion as far as the East County cities, and she knows that what I was going to say here this evening in my prepared speech, and she's 100% behind that. This is on their agenda tomorrow night. They've already had budget discussions on it, and she told me that she predicts that they will unanimously pass it tomorrow evening. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mayor Huber. Our next speaker is Assistant Chief Jeff C.
Okay, you're not the first one that mispronounced my name, nor will you be the last. I'm Jeff Scoba. I'm Assistant Chief with the California Highway Patrol. And my jurisdiction is Ventura and Santa Barbara County. The state of California, in terms of the highway patrols, is broken up into 8 field divisions, and we're part of Coastal Division, which runs from the LA-Ventura County line to just south of Morgan Hill. It encompasses 13 CHP offices in 7 different counties. And of our $2.2 million budget in Coastal Division for total operations, court overtime accounts for over 80% of that funding. Ventura County leads the entire division with over 84% of our non-discretionary overtime going to court costs. So, and That's for a variety of reasons, the economy, procedural, court people are attending court, and court cases are being heard, and some are being thrown out. So Moore Park, for example, just in April, 93% of the overtime cost for Moore Park was for court overtime. And just to give you an idea, just as recently as today, in a 44-officer area such as Moore Park, over a third of the officers were in court. Of the 6 officers that they normally have working Monday through Friday, 3 to 4 will routinely be in court. So, while the drive time is approximately 45 minutes into Ventura, there are other issues there. It's a larger court facility. They're going to have time to park. The court cases being heard on time will probably be significantly impacted, as Judge O'Neill alluded to. And, as far as I'm concerned, the impact there's a public safety impact here. The Highway Patrol takes pride on proactive enforcement and being there to remedy traffic collisions, to provide service to people, to eliminate the risk being on the side of the freeway for an extended period of time, while 2 people may be working this entire jurisdiction here for the Highway Patrol. So it has a significant impact to our operations. I broke in here in Ventura County in 1985. I know from that point in time we have a history of working together. We have received our commissioner's blessing on support for the effort that people behind me are trying to accomplish here. I'm just trying to avoid 5 years from now looking back on this situation now and preventing asking myself or ourselves here, what could we have done to prevent this from happening? So I appreciate your consideration. I appreciate your time this evening, and I'll take any questions if you have them.
Thank you. No questions.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Our next speaker is Glenn Becerra, and Glenn will be followed by Miles Weiss. Councilmember Becerra.
Good
Welcome
evening.
to Thousand Oaks.
It's nice to be here, and I love the whole casual summer attire. I'm going to ask our mayor to implement the same thing at our city. It's nice to see.
That's only July.
I'll take it whenever I get it. Mayor Irvin and council members, as you know, we've worked together on many issues over the years, and regional collaboration is obviously very important. I've been meeting with Jackie for probably 10 years now or more on issues. And, I get that you all understand the importance of working together regionally. And I actually feel very uncomfortable coming today here to ask you to spend, your money. You don't tell us how to spend ours, and we've always had a great respect for the autonomy that each city has to do right by their residents. But it's different in this instance because this is a regional issue having regional impact. I also have to say that I agree completely with the issues that you've discussed, that we should not be bailing out the state, because the reality is we are bailing out the state as they continue to steal from us, and that's enabling and rewarding bad behavior. Again, that being said, these are trying times for all of us. We've watched the city of San Bernardino go bankrupt, the city of Stockton and Mammoth Lakes also go bankrupt, and I'm concerned that they're not the last shoe to drop in local government's bad times. And the state doesn't seem to give, let me just say, they don't seem to care at all. But one of the things that I think makes local government so beautiful is that we are very responsive to our community and the needs of our community. So tonight I'm here to ask you to give strong consideration to this request. because it's important regionally, it's important to our residents, and we do best when we work together. So, with that all being said, I want to thank you for your consideration of this. It's a tough decision. You're in a tough spot. And I know you have residents to represent, and you'll do the right thing by your residents. So thank you for the opportunity to join you tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Becerra. Miles Weiss, and Mr. Weiss will be followed by Steve Soika.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the council and Madam Mayor. I am Miles Weiss. I'm a Chief Deputy District Attorney with the District Attorney's Office. I'm here tonight on behalf of Greg Totten, who could not be here due to illness, and I thank you for the time and attention. I can empathize greatly with the situation you're in. Every agency within the county and all of us have dealt with significant budget issues, and they seem to be getting worse. And we definitely understand that, but I do think this does definitely merit your consideration to consider a partnership and a solution here at the local level. The cuts that the courts have faced have been really unprecedented and fairly draconian. I'm here today essentially as what we call an amicus. That's a friend of the court. And the DA's office does partner with the courts and, of course, the public defender and all parties in the criminal justice system to achieve fairness and justice. In the closure of the East County Courthouse, the risks include the, frankly, future congestion of the Ventura Courthouse. You've heard that described in many ways, but let me share a little bit of the reality of how that works. I've been a prosecutor for 18 years. I've walked those halls, and I've seen every one of those courtrooms and those calendars. And the reality is, if we add 17,000 new cases to the Ventura Courthouse, we're going to do what I call to the witnesses when I bring them to court, unfortunately, ma'am, you're going to hurry up and wait. And that's going to apply to everybody, including the officers. And so, as was mentioned by the CHP Assistant Chief and Chief Pentis, although those costs may not be quantified for you right now, you're going to see these costs come back to you. They're going to come back to you in the form of overtime and increased issues related to that due to officers having to sit and wait in court to get these cases through the process. It would be much more efficient and effective to maintain the East County Courthouse with some modicum of staffing to allow those traffic cases and the like to be heard. You're also going to impact the residents, your taxpayers, by having them not only drive but sit and wait and wait and wait for justice. Some of them will decide not to pursue. Small claim litigants will just give up. Now, the DA's office is committed to helping and partnering, and we're doing that by continuing to staff the East County Courthouse with people who help those needing small claims advice, mediation, and restraining order assistance. And we'll continue to do that and work together with you as a partner. So I understand today the recommendation, and it's not poorly reasoned by any stretch. It was an excellent report. It's to deny funding and deny the request. I'm asking you to perhaps reconsider and confer further on the issue in light of the comments made today. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. Questions? No, thank you. We have another Simi Valley Council person here, Steve Soika. And Councilmember Soika will be followed by another council member from Simi Valley, Mr. Judge. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Irwin and City Council members, and Mr. Mitnick and Ms. Noonan. I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to you tonight. I come here with mixed emotions, to be quite frank. I'm happy to be in your beautiful city of Thousand Oaks, but I'm a little saddened when I look across at the empty chair of my good friend Tom Glancy. So. And then I look over at Ms. Noonan, and I get a little angry. I guess I'm still not over the loss of our former city attorney, but I know she's doing great work for you here.
And remember where she started?
Yes.
Okay.
So I guess touche, huh? Councilmember Price, I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you, but I just want to maybe respectfully disagree with the previous speaker. You should be very proud of your appointment. It speaks volumes of what you've done in your community. I was appointed 14 years ago in Simi Valley, and I tend to believe, or would like to believe, that I've done some good for Simi Valley, and I know you'll do some good for Thousand Oaks. Just here tonight to maybe ask if you can reconsider staff's recommendation. It's funny that we heard the staff report on VISTA and how well collaboration works within our communities and for the East County. And the same holds true with the courthouse. If you close the East County Courthouse, and although it's true that the distance for your officers is probably the same or a little bit more, it's the backlog, I think, that you're going to be seeing that's going to adversely affect your officers if they're stuck in court or sitting in the courthouse and not patrolling on your city streets. What does that do for your community? I think it's incumbent upon all of us to work together, especially in this. And I agree with staff's report that, and with my colleagues' comments earlier, Councilman Becerra, that we have to stop bailing out the state. They just keep on dumping this on us, and we have to come up and come up with the funding that they neglect to fund. But let's not make a statement on this on the backs of our residents for the courthouse. Let's work together to improve the courthouse or the access to the courthouse for the East County, and then go after the state afterwards and maybe look for pots of gold if there are any. But again, just asking if you would reconsider your staff's recommendation and would help us, all of us, fund the 2 years that we need to keep the East County Courthouse open. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Soika. Mike Judge. Mr. Judge will be followed by Mike Powers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, City Council, trusted advisors. I'm here tonight wearing two hats. I'm a city councilman for the city of Simi Valley. I'm also a 22-year law enforcement officer with Los Angeles Police Department. 18 years of those 22 years, I worked patrol. During that time, I wrote a lot of tickets. Nothing to the level of the CHP, but a lot of tickets. Spent a lot of time in traffic court. What I see happening here with the backlog in Ventura, so I know your chief said that the cost would be minimal. I don't know how the sheriff's department tells their officers or what they tell them to do. In LA, we never had a quota. You write as many as you wanted. And we always wrote them for dangerous occurrences, people driving really bad. So those tickets have to go somewhere. They have to go to court. And most of the time, people don't like getting tickets, so they're going to fight them. I was in court 2 to 3 times a week as a patrol officer in traffic court. So as a patrol officer, I'm sitting in court 2 to 3 times a week, and I work night watch. That would be 4 to 5 hours overtime a day, and that's just one officer. I don't know how many officers you have or how many tickets they write, but the overtime will add up. And if they're sitting in Ventura with a backlog like they're talking about, I see cases just getting kicked out. After a maximum amount of time, they're going to stop telling people to go home. Don't have to fight it anymore because, your ticket's going to get thrown out anyways. Just go to court and fight it. That's what will happen. Eventually, that's what's going to come down to is people will know they can do whatever they want. Your traffic accidents will go up. Everything increases. It all comes up because of the traffics. If you're not writing the tickets, if you're not letting people know that they can't drive silly, they're going to drive silly. And that's what happens. That's what causes that. That's what causes traffic accidents. So I come here with the same attitude as my other 2 colleagues. The state has money troubles. Wow, what a shock. So we have to look at that and we have to say, okay, I don't think we're bailing out the state. We're helping our residents through a short period of time. Hopefully, the state can get its act together. I know that's something that not a lot of people believe, but hopefully, and we won't have to do this again. Like the mayor said, our mayor, sorry, excuse me, it's a 2-year process. That's all we're looking for here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Judge. Our next speaker is our county CEO, Mike Powers, and he will be followed by Mike Siddell. Good evening, Mr. Powers.
Good evening, Mayor Irwin, council members, Mr. Mitnick, Ms. Noonan, and city team. As the mayor said, Mike Powers, County Executive Officer. It is a pleasure to be here tonight. And at just the outset, I just want to comment and let you know how much we at the county appreciate our relationship with Mr. Mitnick and your team and the city staff that you have here. And we look forward to continuing to build that in the future. We just wanted to give you a sense of the county's approach to this. As we saw it, we certainly understand the fiscal challenges that you're facing and not wanting to bail out the state. What we looked for at the beginning was we asked the courts to identify that critical level of service that they could keep open. And they did that. And then we asked that they look for different creative ways of lowering their costs. And they did that. And then we looked ourselves and said, in terms of county services, there are things that we can do to lower those costs. And you've heard that we lowered those facilities charges, phone, IT, that kind of thing by about 170. And actually, I learned tonight it's closer to about 200,000 that we've managed to lower that. And so we really tried to narrow down what an actual funding gap would be before we wanted to develop any recommendation for our board. And that's what we did, and that's how we got to the point that we did. And the $100,000 or their $50,000 a year, just so you know, it's one time, comes from one-time fund balance. It's not built into our budget. And it was identified as a critical service and need by our board and as being a county-wide issue. And that's why they felt it was so important and to be part of this collaborative. So with that, I just want to share our approach to it. I'm sorry I don't have any sixth grader stories with me tonight, but these are tough times, and we really appreciate you considering this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Powers. Just a couple of questions, and I'm not quite sure you'll be the right guy to answer them. Two questions is, it's my understanding that the funding, the bridge funding, is for a 2-year period, and that is to allow the courts, the local courts, the county, somebody, to work with the state to change the law that would change the funding formula for Ventura County. Is that correct?
Well, that's one of the approaches, and I think Mr. Siddell has some additional ideas. That's one of the approaches. There could be others. Who knows? There could be economic improvement during that time, but 2 years gives us some breathing room to try to find that solution, maybe other alternatives.
Right.
That's the approach.
If that proves to be unsuccessful, what do you foresee happening to the East County Court?
Well, it's a difficult situation, no question about it, and all I can tell you right now is that our board committed to this funding, understanding it was one time of a limited duration. And that's why it was not built into our budget, our ongoing budget.
Right.
We used one-time funds to do it.
Would it be fair to say that the likelihood of ongoing funding would be remote at best?
Counsel, he's asking me to speculate. There's some judges here. Thank you very much. All right. No further questions? With respect, Council Member, all I can do is really repeat what our board has done.
So it's for 2 years?
Yes, that's correct.
And nothing after that?
That was their recommendation.
All right.
Yes.
Very good. I'll ask Mr. Siddell that question.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Powers. Next speaker is Mike Siddell, and Mr. Siddell will be followed by Debbie Birnbaum.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, Mike Siddell. I'm not sure what title to use at this point, but I appreciate being here and working with all of you on an ongoing basis, and your staff. I think the relationships that our staffs have had over the years have been very positive, and we've achieved a lot, and our councils a lot together, working on problems to try and find mutual solutions and that common ground that we always try to find. And that's really what we're doing here. I try not to deal with the problems that the states created and the reasons for those. We all know the reasons for those. We can go and rail against them a lot. What we're trying to deal with here is the results of those and how do we deal with them, because it is what it is right now and we have to deal with it. And what it is the courts having, through a number of reasons, insufficient funds because of the state cuts to be able to continue the East County Courthouse. And it's been said by the other speakers here what the impacts of that are, and they're a tremendous impact throughout the county. And that's what we've tried to recognize, that this ad hoc group that came together to find a way, if there was a way to keep the courthouse open, and had come up after a number of really negotiating sessions of what are the real costs, how do we reduce those costs, what's the least amount of money that we can have to come up with to try and keep that courthouse open in an operating capacity and relieve the pressure that's going to be created in Ventura. And through that negotiations process, which took several weeks, we came up with this plan that the judge described before, that Judge O'Neill described, to try and keep the court open for 2 years. The courts have agreed that even if there's further state cuts, and we all agree there may well be further state cuts, that this agreement will be in place for that period of a 2-year time frame, that even if next year they get cut further, this agreement will be a binding agreement that will be in place for 2 years, and they will keep the courthouse open for those 2 days. We're also trying at the same time to see if there is additional funding at the state, which is very difficult. And some of the things that your staff recommended, I don't disagree with. We want to see if there's legislative remedies. Unfortunately, there isn't the time for that legislative remedy in this fiscal year. The states adopted their budget. Supervisor Foy and I were in Sacramento, I believe it was last week or the week before last, met with Senator Pavley's staff. I met with the Speaker Pro Tem staff. We met with the governor's staff. They believe that the program that we're proposing and the plan that we're proposing is a very viable plan. They felt that it was a very good plan. They also felt that it was on target with money that, and exactly the kind of thing that they had set money aside for the courts in the budget for, in a line item for the court system to look at hardship cases in various counties that had specific instances of problems. And they said this is exactly the kind of thing that we put that money in there for from the legislature and the governor's support. And it was actually in the governor's proposal that the legislature approved. And they said that they would support it, in fact talked about a delegation letter supporting it. Unfortunately, it was just adopted the week before in the budget and the trailer bill at the last minute that was sent to the courts. The courts still need, the administrative office of the courts and for the state needs to talk about a distribution process and how they're going to do that. And it won't happen until at least late August, early September before those decisions are made, which is too late for this process to keep the courts open. We need to get the agreement in place. The courts have been kind enough to allow at their risk that court to remain open the 2 days a week now at their risk. And so we're looking for that solution. We've got a number of solutions we're trying to approach. The state is clearly sympathetic to it. The budget's been passed. The following year we may have it. In addition, if I may, if I could explain some other things we're doing up there, that we're also looking at that distribution of the court dollars. There is recognition in the meeting that we had with the governor's office as well as with Senator Pavley's office that the allocation, the trial court judicial branch allocation percentages by county needs to change. That formula will be looked at. It was done a number of years ago. The representative of the governor's office addressed that fact, said it was a number of years ago. It does need to be updated. That's recognized, and there will be some changes to that. Right now, Ventura County gets 1.71%, to answer a question that came up before, 1.71% of the statewide trial court funding. And as a comparison, for example, Kern County gets 1.8%. The real comparison to see is Los Angeles County gets 28.28%. Well, guess who's got the largest number of lobbyists in Sacramento? We need to look at that. The courts need to look at that, and I think they will be in this coming year. So we want to impact that as well as continue to seek funding from this money that's been set aside, $42 million that's been set aside statewide for these hardship cases. But all of that's going to take time, and we need this bridge funding to try and get us through that. It is 1 year at a time for 2 years. It's a 2-year commitment, and it's the amount of $65,000 for Thousand Oaks, $75,000 for Simi Valley each year, those 2 years. The courts have agreed, and everyone's agreed that this is a 2-year plan. If we can't get this worked out in 2 years, it's over because we'll never get it worked out, and we need to get it worked out at the state. So hopefully I've answered some of your questions. I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Siddell. Questions for Mr. Siddell? Councilmember Bill Villalpena.
Good evening, Mr. Siddell, and thank you very much for coming here tonight. My question is, how did you arrive at the $275,000 amount?
There was a meeting that the city manager held where this issue was discussed, and there was no magic formula that, just like the RANA numbers, that anyone could come up with that would say this is the right exact amount for your city in a formula basis that could be discussed. In a generic sense, what everyone felt was those cities that are larger have a greater impact, those cities that are closer to the east end have a greater impact, those at the west end have lesser impact, the smaller cities have lesser impact, lesser citizens. So really there was a proposal floated that this seems like a reasonable amount for each city. Simi Valley having the highest number, Thousand Oaks having the same rough population, a large population, but to the east end, but farther away from the courthouse. Moorpark being a smaller city, but closer to the courthouse than perhaps other cities. Ventura being smaller than Oxnard, and it was just a rough number that everyone came up with. It felt like a fairly fair distribution of the dollars, with a recognition that the very small cities that were having some very real structural problems in their budget probably couldn't afford to do anything, and the couple $1,000s they might be able to contribute would probably more of a hardship than it would be elsewhere, that the big cities could possibly pick that up by the time you distribute it to all the other cities. So that was a rough process that we went through to come up with that at the city manager's meeting.
Thank you for clarifying that. My second question is, Camarillo already said no to $15,000. Did you have a contingency there as well to ask the council to come up with the $15,000?
Camarillo, in their budget process, their city manager and assistant city manager had supported in their budget process. The council had some questions they couldn't answer at that time. They basically pulled it out of the budget. They didn't technically deny it. They pulled it out of the budget, didn't approve it. Supervisor Foy has had some conversations with their mayor, and we're going to be sitting down with their mayor to go through the process. He's very open to hearing the concerns and the issues and possibly bringing it back, as is the city manager.
And what about Oxnard's $30,000? I see that there is no city council meeting scheduled.
There hasn't been a city council meeting where this has been agendized at this point in time. However, I know that Supervisor Zaragoza will be talking with some of their council members. Supervisor Foy has talked with some of their council members. I know there is concern there for the impacts that some of the judges have actually mentioned to us about some of the people that really don't have access to Ventura, much less getting there if they're held there after 3 or 4 o'clock to be able to have any transportation even back to Oxnard. Some walk after 4 o'clock. If they're out after 4, they don't have a ride back. The buses aren't running. They're actually walking. There's very real concern for a number of residents based on the sociodemographics in Oxnard of being able to have access if that courthouse gets overcrowded. Once they're hearing about this, the Oxnard council members seem to have some concern about dealing with it and trying to work on it. So we do have some hope that Oxnard, when they see the rest of the areas coming into it, the other cities coming on board, we're very hopeful that they will also recognize the impacts, and they have, and what they've told us, individual members.
And then, of course, the question that's at the crux of all of this is how is Simi Valley paying for the $75,000 share?
The city looked at it as part of our budget, our annual budget. We placed it in based on revenues that we received last year over anticipated revenues coming in, and there was resources there that we placed it within our budget. The council adopted that budget based on the fact that we had the revenues that were unanticipated from the previous budget year that did come in higher than expected. And that's how we looked at it. It was a one-time cost basis that we looked at. It wasn't an ongoing program that we would have to adopt and be concerned about into the future every year. It was something we'd adopt first year of a 2-year budget process, and it was over. Similar to how we look at a public works project, a one-time expenditure.
Thank you very much for your thorough answers.
Mr. Fox?
Mr. Siddell, thanks for coming down tonight. Before I get into this issue, it's been pointed out, many decades of service here in Ventura County. You've always been a complete pro, a mentor, I think, to a lot of the city managers who were in Ventura County before that, with our congressman as his field rep here, chief of staff. It's just congratulations on a really great career of public service, and we wish you the best in your retirement.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Mike, let me just carry on with some of the questions from Councilmember Bill Leda Pena. I'm noting here there's 4 cities that have yet to either be asked or take a position on this, from Camarillo, Moore Park, Oxnard, and Ventura. And that totals somewhere around $85,000 if my...
Sounds about right.
Okay.
Figured out.
Is there a contingency if one or some of those cities does not participate? Or is it everybody's in or the whole thing falls apart?
The budget that we came up with after, as I described before, a lot of negotiation was $275,000 to make this work.
Right.
We will need to reevaluate how can we make this work if there isn't the $275,000, whether the cities need to contribute more, whether there's some way, and I don't know how that would be because I know how tense, not tense isn't the word, but how detailed those negotiations were in trying to get down to that number. But it would be very problematic to make it work. It would be very difficult to make it work. Could it happen? There's always a plan B, but is it going to be an easy one? It's going to be very difficult, and I'm not sure exactly how it would work at this point. And if I did, I probably wouldn't say what it was anyway, but,
right.
To be fair. But at the same time, no, we need to come up with that number to really make it work correctly, to make it work right, and to relieve the burden that we'll all face.
And maybe I should ask Mr. Powers this when he was up here. It appears that of all of them, the county might be in the best position to subsidize some of the other cities if they don't participate for this program. Is that at least something that's going to be considered?
Well, that's something that I would have to refer to the county on. However, I would, as Mr. Powers, I think, mentioned, that the county, through their agreements with the courts and the leasing of the facilities
right.
and the overhead that they charge them, reduced them by $170,000 to help make this work, in addition to the $50,000 they've come up with this plan. So they've really stepped up to the plate tremendously to try and make this work and address this and cut their revenues basically by that $170,000 prior to their contributing the $50,000 more. Right. So yes, they possibly could, but it would be asking an awful lot for this county. They've really stepped up on this one.
Okay. And then the last question, and admittedly this may be a difficult question, but it's something that you're asking the city to deal with, and that is for the cities that put money in, if there's no relief at the state, notwithstanding some of the promising information you're getting You've been around a long time, and I just have very, very little faith in the state and what they say and what they do. But if we're unable to get a change in formula or new funding, essentially the money that's been put in, is that money that basically was just spent to prolong the inevitable?
It would be money that was spent to continue the court, in effect, as long as we can keep it going. In terms of the meeting in Sacramento, I should note, and yes, I don't have a lot of faith in the state itself either, but I do have a lot of faith in being able to tweak formulas and do some things that we've seen happen in this county many times over in the last few years that we're working on. And we have some very strong support from the legislator, from both sides, both parties in the legislature, from the governor's office. Another person that was in the meeting with us was Aaron Reed, as well as our mutual lobbyist in Sacramento, Anthony Gonsalves. Aaron Reed is the lobbyist for the California Highway Patrol Officers Association, which is a very powerful lobby in Sacramento. He's very well known and very powerful. He's working with us. They really want to see it done. He was a big help there. So we have some very powerful forces working with us to try and see if this happens for Ventura County, and they recognize the issue. We would become basically the largest population to courthouse number in the state of California if this courthouse closes.
All right. I appreciate it. Again, congratulations on a great career.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Siddell. Our next speaker is Debbie Birnbaum, and Ms. Birnbaum will be followed by Debbie Gregory.
Good evening.
Good evening, Ms. Birnbaum.
My name is Debbie Birnbaum, and I live in Newbury Park. We've heard many comments tonight from county and neighboring communities asking us to be a good community neighbor, county neighbor. As a longtime Thousand Oaks resident and member of the bar, I'm here as a Thousand Oaks resident to urge the council to carefully consider contributing to the funding of the East County Courthouse in Simi. The residents of Thousand Oaks deserve to have a swift and convenient access to justice. The costs aren't just monetary, as we've heard. We're going to kick back cases years. Without a second county courthouse, cases now heard in Simi will be moved to the Ventura Courthouse, causing a serious backlog and delay in the administration of justice for the people that live in Thousand Oaks. Tonight I've heard repeatedly that the city of Thousand Oaks is one of the most economically sound communities in the county, and I've heard a lot, huge expenditures in red, huge expenditures okayed by you just tonight. If this is the case, if we are that economically sound, then I think we should pony up and carry our share to contribute to the operating costs so that the people of Thousand Oaks continue to have access to this very important resource. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Birnbaum. Debbie Gregory, followed by Nick Kidwai.
Good evening. I'm a resident of Thousand Oaks. We live in a global world. It's very nice to see all the different cities and distinguished speakers within the county come to collaborate to get this to be a win-win, and it is a win-win. We in Thousand Oaks have seen our services eroded as residents. From my point of view, this is a no-brainer. Tonight's consent calendar, I couldn't add it all up. It was literally tens of millions of dollars on it. This is $65,000 for 2 years. And this is about our system of justice, which goes hand in hand with democracy, the American way of life. This is not about traffic court and just the time for officers to commute to go to Ventura. It's about small claims court. It's about family court, civil court, protecting people with restraining orders, having people use the justice system. That's what America's about. And it's nice to see so many cities and the county support it. I think not to approve it would be penny wise and pound foolish and not in the best interests of the residents of Thousand Oaks. The East County Court, if it's closed, it's unlikely that it'll open again. You're talking about $130,000 over 2 years. I think we need to be a leader in this county. We need to join with these other fine cities, and this should not be one of the cuts that's made. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gregory. Mr. Kidwai, followed by Alan Ball.
Nick Kidwai, resident of Newbury Park, Director, Concerned Citizens House on Oaks. I think in my 20 years coming here, I've never seen such an august gathering in the audience. And I'm really upset that these wonderful law enforcement and public servants from Simi and Moore Park have to be away from their families because this city council and city manager does not take the appropriate action. And there's a lot of things that happen behind closed doors, and the message should have been given. This is a no-brainer, like the last speaker said, and it will be approved 4-0, but there will be no heroes on that day, as far as I'm concerned. I would especially like to acknowledge Mike Siddell and his service. I made a mistake. Mr. Glenn Becerra was sitting in the back. I thought he was Ron Bemier. I really apologize. I heard him several times on KNX. He is a really wonderful public servant. And I want to apologize publicly to Mayor Huber. He returned my phone call, and somehow I missed it. And, I get stripped in my own city. But Mayor Huber called me, left a message. What a wonderful public servant. And it goes on for all these people. There are wonderful people that are working hard to keep this county safe, keep Ventura County values what they are. I would like to say, which I said publicly, and it's in the council green packet on the web, and I'll repeat it. What a disgraceful and shameful report it is. You guys are nuts and do not care one bit for the average Thousand Oaks resident. Your mission statement should be removed. If TOTV can help me with the mission statement, there it is. Extraordinary service to the citizens we service is our purpose and product. I mean, please scrap that. If you don't realize that having this courthouse is a service and needed by the citizens of Thousand Oaks, you should all pack up and leave. Mr. Becerra talked about the casual attire. I'm also on casual attire. I'm just hoping that by mistake one of the checks of the executive team might be turned over to me in the casual attire by mistake, that thinking that he needs it because he has to go on the European vacation. If TOTV can just help me again, there's a solution there. TOTV, yeah, there it is. The law enforcement people are paid maximum $200,000, stuff like that, not $400,000 like the city manager. There's so much money in this city, it's ridiculous, and the cuts should be made at the right places. And it's about time that you folks wake up and stop these people from being away from their families and act on these decisions, and don't try to be heroes by passing these things which are a no-brainer. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Mr. Kidwai. Alan Ball, followed by William. Good evening, Mr. Ball.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council members. My name is Alan Ball. I am the president of the Ventura County Trial Lawyers Association, and I appear tonight, too, with representatives of MABA, the Mexican American Bar Association. We would like to urge you to fund this initiative, obviously. I would suggest that it's the state's fault is not a reasoned approach to a solution based upon the good of the public and the citizenry. There has been a term that's been used tonight that there is a partnership to a solution. Rather than being an obstacle or a hindrance or a barrier, we would urge you to engage in the partnership to the solution. I'm going to do something right now that I wouldn't possibly be able to do in court. And I'm going to ask you individually to imagine that you have a ticket that you don't think you owe. You didn't run the stop sign. You weren't speeding. And you have a 9 o'clock court appearance, but you're going up the 101 with 17,000 other people. Now, that's not going to be $17,000, but that's going to be annually the percentage of that on a 365-day minus weekends and court holidays appearance. You're trying to get to the parking lot, and you can't park because of the gross increase in parking. There will be insufficient parking. You finally walk into the courtroom at 10:30. You had a 9 o'clock court appearance. That doesn't make any difference, though, because your case is going to be heard at 2:45. The actual waiting time, the actual commuting time, the lack of parking, the overflow in just traffic cases, let alone what if you needed a restraining order, is going to be dramatic. It is going to be a direct effect, or it is going to have a direct effect on human productivity. And that is something I would respectfully suggest that you consider, let alone overtime, let alone waiting time, let alone the fact that the people will go in and say, I will fight this ticket, because the officer won't have a chance to show up. And what would the officer want to go for? Because he's going to be waiting 4 to 5 hours on a traffic ticket. This will have a dramatic effect, and on behalf of the Ventura County Trial Lawyers Association and MABA, we would urge you to support funding. Thank you very much.
Thank you. William, followed by Brett Anderson. Schnaber.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council people. I apparently am going to be the only attorney appearing in front of you that supports the motion to defund the Simi Valley Courthouse. I'm an attorney that has offices in Ventura. I live in Oxnard. I've been practicing since 1979. I specialize in landlord-tenant matters. I appear routinely at the Simi Valley Courthouse. I was there a week ago Monday. I'll be there next Monday. I appear in Ventura on Thursdays for unlawfully detainer trials there. Prior to 2004, any attorney could file and try an unlawful detainer, a landlord-tenant matter, anywhere in the county, i.e. we could choose Simi Valley, we could choose Ventura. The overwhelming majority of those attorneys, including defense attorneys, preferred to try their cases in Ventura. Only when the court system required us to try our cases in Simi Valley were we forced to do that. My recollection, and the court personnel are here, they could probably correct. My recollection, the calendars for unlawful detainer matters in Simi Valley averaged between 10 and 14 matters. We start at 2 o'clock. I believe now my knowledge is prior to the recent defunding, we always heard our cases on Wednesdays. And it started at 2 o'clock on Wednesdays. I think maybe one time we went to 5:10. In other words, the calendar was relatively straightforward, relatively quick. So the discussion about long lines in Ventura when these cases get transferred certainly is not going to be the case for landlord-tenant matters. To appease the individuals who don't want to see the Simi Valley Court shut down, I suggest there is a method of dealing with this problem, and that's through technology. I see we have a television screen. I appear in the bankruptcy court. I appeared 2 months ago in courtroom 302 in Santa Barbara, 202 in Santa Barbara. Judge Carroll was in his courtroom in LA. We appeared via television conferencing. I see no reason why the traffic officers that have appeared here, there can't be some type of technological connection so they can appear in the Simi Valley substation or the Thousand Oaks substation and be there in front of a judge. It's clearly not as good as having the personal contact. I have an appearance tomorrow morning in bankruptcy court at 9:30. I uploaded my order from my office. All of the documents had to be electronically filed. And I really don't even have to appear. It's just out of 25 years of routinely appearing that I go. I could appear on court call. Basically, if you have any questions, happy to answer the questions. I feel there is no need to keep the Simi Valley Courthouse open.
Thank you. Any questions? All right. Our next speaker is Brett Anderson, and Brett will be followed by Jian Li.
Madam Mayor and council members, thank you for your time tonight. I am the president of the East County Bar Association, a bar association that serves the members of Thousand Oaks, Westlake Village, Simi Valley, Moore Park. I'm also on the board of directors of the Ventura County Bar Association. I live in Thousand Oaks, and I'm a practicing attorney. I have been conflicted on this issue, candidly, because I expect each of you to be conservative with the cost issues that you face, and I respect the challenges that you're facing, and I would hope that you are careful with the funds and the issues that you're dealing with, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate your service. For a number of reasons, I am in support of funding this initiative, and I think that putting chains on the courthouse doors sends the wrong message to the community and to the citizens of this great Conejo Valley. And as a litigator and as someone who has taken cases to trial and been in trial and been in front of judges, personally appearing in front of judges and being able to promptly resolve the disputes you have is vital to my clients, who are primarily business owners, people who are involved in business transactions. It's critical to them to be able to get their matters resolved. And I know that with increased traffic, increased volume, those delays in getting cases to trial will increase, and it magnifies litigation costs when you drag cases out over multiple years as opposed to getting them to trial in 1-2 years on the outside. It just makes costs and matters worse. Again, thank you for your time, and I respect the situation that you're in and understand that you have a difficult task ahead of you, but would request and ask that you take this step to fund this measure and keep the courthouse open. Thank you.
Thank you. Yan Lee, followed by our last speaker, David Shane.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, Mayor Protrem, and City staff. It's my honor to be here in front of you again. I was here previously to bring this issue to your attention, so I'm glad to be here again. I wanted to acknowledge all the bar leaders who are present, who will be speaking and have spoken already. But there are a few that are here that are not going to be speaking, but I wanted to at least introduce them to you. First, we have Katie Petrolunga. She is the president of the California Young Lawyers Association. She's also a resident of Simi Valley. We have also Natalie Panosian, who's the president of the Gold Coast Federalist Society, and she's a resident of Moore Park. We also have David Shane, who's a past president of our bar association, and he's a resident of Thousand Oaks. David? Yeah. He'll be speaking shortly. So we have a number of other, supporters, and the support has been overwhelming. I mean, when this issue came before me, I was very passionate about it because, first of all, I'm a resident of Newbury Park. I often do not get involved in local politics, and I never thought as president of the bar I'd have to. So this is all very new to me, and it's been a great learning experience. So this is something I'm really passionate about, and you've heard about issues of access to justice, public safety, things that I won't repeat again, but I'm hoping you will look at the bigger picture of this and really dig deep and really consider, funding this, because it's really important to the residents that you provide this service through this courthouse. And as one of the speakers mentioned, the mission statement is for you to provide extraordinary service to your citizens, and this will do that. Otherwise, you are not doing that, and you're not sort of living up to your mission. I just want to repeat some of the emails I received from some of our members of our bar association who couldn't be here. One member wrote her expression to the council that how important it is to keep the courthouse open for the restraining order matters. I am a mediator for civil harassment, and I can state how difficult it would be for these cases to be settled without the Simi Valley Courthouse. Most of the cases I've mediated involve people who have no financial resources to hire an attorney for protection against civil harassment, and these people would most likely not be able to travel to Ventura multiple times in order to obtain a restraining order. Many of these cases involve neighbor disputes, which prompt which without prompt remedial measures can escalate with tragic results. That's just one email. Another email I received that how closure of this courthouse would be a major inconvenience for Thousand Oaks and Simi Valley residents. Aside from the closer location and easier drive, there's no comparison between processing a traffic ticket in Simi versus the cattle call you will experience in Ventura. Another argument is a wise investment. This is something that's a wise investment at the expense of less than 50 cents per Thousand Oaks resident. So these are just some of the examples that I've received, and the support has been overwhelming, and I hope the council will look and just, see the wider picture and take the leadership position, because I believe that all the cities that have not weighed in on this issue are looking at Thousand Oaks to be the leader, and to act in the spirit of cooperation will be send a strong message to the whole county. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And our last speaker is David Shane.
Good evening, Mayor Irwin and members of the council. My name is David Shane. I'm a 28-year resident of Thousand Oaks, as mentioned, a former Bar Association president, practicing attorney who practices in both of the courts in Ventura County. As most of you know, as all of you know, the courts are a co-equal branch of government constitutionally, yet they lack the ability to provide any funding for their own services, which puts them at a significant disadvantage with respect to the other branches of government. Yet who can argue the courts are what really are the thread that hold our society together. The ability to work out, resolve disputes, is paramount to us getting along with our neighbors, not to mention, obviously, the various aspects that the courts serve. Simi Valley Court, small claims, traffic infractions, these are the issues, these are the reasons that most people in our society have contact with the court. There are business disputes, there are lawsuits, there obviously are criminal events as well, but what kind of a statement are we making to the citizens of our community to say, you who have these needs to take care of your traffic matters, to have small claims, to live together, to say, we're shutting down the courthouse. What kind of a statement does that make to say, in terms of the value that we place on our system of justice? I think it sends a very clear message to our citizens that maybe this isn't so important. This is a lower priority. We are in this together, ladies and gentlemen. Let's not be parochial about it. Let's accept the fact that we live together in our city, we live together in our county. Let's make a stand and do what's right for the citizens of Ventura County and of Thousand Oaks. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have 8 written statement cards, and all are in favor of funding the courthouse. All right, council discussion.
Yes.
Mr. Fox?
I just had a question with the permission of the mayor. I'm not quite sure who would be best to answer this. If there is a change in formula where Ventura County gets its fair share and it happens within the next year, will the cities that put the money in be reimbursed? Oh, great, just the presiding judge.
First time that one's been asked, I'll say yes.
What would the mechanism
it would
for that
only be
Your Honor?
fair. However, realistically, it's highly unlikely that we could get a solution in place short of at least 6 months, probably 12. That's my best guesstimate based on what I've experienced, working with the state administrative office of the courts.
But it would be your understanding, Your Honor, that if the formula would change or new money were found, that the cities that put money in would be reimbursed?
Well, it would only be fair to do that.
Right.
And we are dealing with a couple new critters on the block that the legislature created. They took our reserve funds and all the county courts' reserve funds away, swept them in directly or indirectly, and then created this statewide so-called emergency fund. It's a new animal. That was what was referred to as the money that, and procedures that might be in effect sometime early fall, late summer this year. So there's going to be a whole process with 58 counties, if they wish to, taking cracks at it. But we're hoping that the effort that we're making locally, this coalition that we hope gels, will look awfully good when our application for extra funds gets reviewed.
All right. Thanks, Your Honor.
Other questions?
Yes.
Councilmember Bill de la Pena?
The cost that is requested is $65,000 per year, and I was wondering whether any funds in the Dos Vientos Development Fund could be used to pay for that.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, what funds are left are typically used for capital improvement projects, but council would have discretion to use that as a potential funding source.
Thank you, because I would like to move that we not follow staff recommendation number 2, but that we allocate $65,000 per year from the Dos Vientos Community or Development Fund for 2 years. And also, as the second recommendation would be to direct staff to continue to work collaboratively with Ventura County, because obviously elected officials and others have already been working with state officials in order to find a solution to this problem. I have been very impressed with the presentation and the urgent pressing call for regionalism and partnership, which is vitally important to not only Thousand Oaks, but to all of Ventura County. And it would be my hope that the other cities would continue to follow suit should the City Council tonight approve that we use that money from the Dos Vientos Development Fund to pay for 2 years.
Thank you, Ms. Bill de la Pena. Mr. Fox?
Yeah, let me begin by thanking all the speakers who came in this evening. Very persuasive, although a number of you get paid to be persuasive, so I'm not giving you a whole lot of credit there. I'm not going to support that motion for a number of reasons. First, there are 4 cities that have not participated in this at all or even evaluated it, and I think for us to jump in for 2 years would be premature. The other issue that I'm concerned with in terms of a 2-year commitment is the likelihood, from my perspective and my experience, that we will be putting money in for a 2-year period of time. There will not be any resolution to the state, and the inevitable of the courts closing will happen anyway. So to that end, I'm not comfortable with that motion. I am prepared to make what I would consider a more middle-of-the-road motion that I think first and foremost assists with the regionalization aspect of this, because Thousand Oaks has long been a partner. We recognize we are part of a bigger body. And at the same time, while I'm looking at some very distinguished people, I know you all understand, we were elected for municipal government, and we, at the end of the day, we're held to represent the city of Thousand Oaks and the people who live in Thousand Oaks, many of which who spoke here this evening. And I think it needs to be pointed out and placed on the record that there are a number of funding programs, there are a number of issues here in Thousand Oaks that we are not funding, that day-to-day help our community. I live down the street from the teen center. Every school year, they're lined up out to Jan's Road. We're looking at $100,000 to construct a gymnasium there. We're not doing that. On the agenda this evening, we are cutting the community prosecutor program, a public safety issue that I know the judges are aware of and the prosecutors are aware of, simply because we can't afford the full funding. So we've cut funding in that. We have eliminated funding in the police department. We have made substantial cuts in our library system, of which is the jewel of the county, not only in hours and programs, but in staff. And so I could go on and on and on, but I think for us to fund a 2-year program that likely, at least at this point, may not get changed around, I think, would not be in keeping with what our mission is and what our true calling is. And so I'm not going to support the motion, but I am prepared to make a subsequent motion that, from my perspective anyway, I think shows our good faith. It certainly helps you in the near term, but at the same time, I think represents and respects the many programs and the many partnerships we have here in the city that we are no longer participating in.
You don't want to talk about what your subsequent motion is before we...
I can, but
Well-
there's a motion on the table, so I can't make a motion.
Okay.
I'm going to vote no on this, and then I'm going to offer a subsequent motion.
But how can we vote no if we don't know what the subsequent motion is?
Well, it would be for one-year funding. To start with, it would be for $6,500. It would be with the $65,000 rather. Your motion was for 2 years, unless I heard you wrong. Right. This would be for one-year funding, and we would also do it with the understanding that if there is, the state does come back and does change the formula, that Thousand Oaks would be reimbursed, and that we would let the city manager determine what account we're going to take the money out of. We're not going to direct the city manager to take it out of a specific fund. That's the parameters of it.
Mr. Price, did you have a comment?
Well, truly
Or
a comment to the comment to the motion. The first motion and I guess the subsequent motion. I'm thoroughly impressed with the number of folks that have come out here tonight and spoken on behalf of this. While I don't necessarily agree with everything that's been said, I do think that there's been a persuasive case made here for keeping that courthouse open. Being in law enforcement, I certainly understand that keeping courthouses open is vitally important to the communities that it serves. I've lived through the closure of a number of courthouses in Los Angeles County, and it does create some impact on not just the police officers, but the residents as well. So I would like to ask Councilmember Fox, excuse me, I think you answered the question when you said that you would leave it up to the city attorney, or excuse me, the city manager to determine what fund that $65,000 came out of?
Yeah, let me just add in, the other thing I think is problematic is there are a number of cities who have not taken a position on this, and so I think by us at least putting some money forward, we're showing good faith, we're showing partnership, and then we need to let the other cities see what they're going to do. Mr. Siddell did his very best, but the answer is they don't know what the other cities are going to do. And there is no real contingency plan, at least based on what we heard here tonight. My sense is there probably is something that's been talked about. But I think for us to seed money, so to speak, to see what the other cities do, just is a reasoned and a conservative approach to an issue that ultimately is a state issue. I know no one wants to hear that, but everybody has said it. And we are certainly not in a position on an ongoing basis to fund the court system. So.
Well, I would completely agree with that. Would we be able to ask Mr. Siddell to comment on that and whether or not that might be a solution that would work?
Sure.
I think that the numbers that we had talked about, and I asked the presiding judge to join me here, because the numbers that we had talked about through all of our discussions have been based upon a 2-year plan. And for them to be able to continue it 1 year with a contingency, can they go a second year, I think is more a question for the presiding judge. I hate to put him on the spot, but I don't know how else to answer that, because we would have to have that discussion, and maybe a discussion we have to have out of here, I'm not sure.
So the specific question is, if we don't get the 275, where do we end up?
Well, I think since the question was mine, I think that if you had cities who were willing to step forward and commit to a 1-year funding for the program, could we make that work?
Absolutely. The reason that we have talked about 2 years with the ad hoc committee from the start is because we've been led to believe, and nothing has changed up to today, when we sat in, or Mike Planet sat in on at AOC budget working group meeting. Nothing's changed to lead us to believe that the overall situation will get any better a year from now. So we did not want to get involved in this process without being honest about the fact that we don't think 1 year's enough to get out of the woods and come up with a real solution. But if we get 1 year's worth of funding, we're open for a year, and we're going to do our best to figure out a solution from that point on.
Your Honor, it's probably the first and only opportunity I'll have to ask a question of a judge, so I'm going to take it. But and now I've lost the question, but I'm somewhat intimidated by judges. But no, the question deals with whether or not you would agree that this step might, and maybe this is a question that Mr. Siddell could answer, since he's dealt with some of the other city managers and he's talked to some of the other staff in the cities that haven't yet taken a position on this, and in fact Camarillo, who elected not to participate. Do you think that this good faith effort by the city of Thousand Oaks would help you in convincing other cities to participate?
I think that being able to go to the other cities and show that Thousand Oaks did agree in concept of the issue, which is what I'm hearing, but is concerned about, is this a reality after 2 years that they're really going to pick it up, and want something to see that, in fact, by the end of 1 year, before Thousand Oaks is willing to commit to a second year, they want to see that that's there. I think that's a very strong argument to show that there is good faith and that we're working together towards this, and I would be hopeful that that would be the same with the courts. But, and again, as the judge said, I'm not sure we'll have this complete in 1 year, but we'll certainly be able to show that there's significant progress within 1 year if we're not complete in trying to get this done.
Thank you. I think that plays some of my fears anyway.
Councilmember Bill De La Pena.
Mr. Siddell, while you're still at the podium, I do have a question. You said something during your earlier comments that I or people in the news business refer to as bearing the lead. You said, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that should the East County Courthouse close, that Ventura County would be the largest populated area without a courthouse, or with just one courthouse in the entire state of California?
The largest population to courthouse ratio, yes, for a single courthouse to serve 800,000 people would be the largest for one courthouse.
Thank you.
Right, Mr. Price, so, okay, well, why don't we vote on the original motion?
Actually, I have a question for staff. What was the difference between Simi Valley and Ventura for the courthouse? Was it a 5-mile one-way difference, or?
Roughly from City Hall, roughly 18 miles to Simi, 23 miles to Ventura. The dividing line in Thousand Oaks is somewhere between Lynn Road and Ventura Park. Roughly half of Thousand Oaks closer to Ventura, half of Thousand Oaks closer to Simi.
Mm-hmm. So about 5 miles.
From City Hall.
Yeah, one way. Mm-hmm. And so we don't know how many cases of the 17,000 court cases are in Thousand Oaks or triggered by Thousand Oaks or filed by Thousand Oaks.
No, we asked for that information. The courts, they don't keep their data and that information. It wasn't that they didn't want to provide it, just that's not how their cases are categorized.
Okay. All right. I don't know if we want to dismiss Mr. Siddell and...
Yeah, I think we're done.
I mean... No, not to dismiss, but you may be seated. I was just wondering, trying to do the math. I know that a comment was made earlier this evening that the cost is very minor in terms of mileage. But if you consider 10, when you have, say, of the 17,000 cases, about half are Thousand Oaks, and this is just hypothetically speaking, you have 5 miles, 10 miles round trip, more or less, and
That's only for half the residents.
Yes, that would be half the residents.
No, but I'm saying half the residents, it's closer to go to Ventura.
For some of them, yes. For
half of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Correct. And so I think that in calculating the mileage, according to the IRS rate, we could be looking at the $40,000 cost per year based on mileage alone. So I think that is something that we do need to keep in mind as well, is that it sounds like it's very few miles, but when you consider the mileage, not including the time it takes, it could be anywhere around $40,000. Having said that, I will not remove my motion. I would like to have a vote on the motion because I think that tremendous effort has been made in order to keep the East County Courthouse open. And a 2-year plan sounds like a viable plan in concept. Whether it will be successful remains to be seen. It is also very, very encouraging to see that so many different representatives from other areas in the county really take such an interest in keeping the East County Courthouse open. It is vital to our residents, and I think that considering some of the costs, some of the other expenditures that we make, $65,000, while a lot of money, really is something that I think the city of Thousand Oaks would be able to afford. And whether it comes from a development fund or any other sort of discretionary fund, of course, that can always be left up for discussion.
Do you want to amend your motion then, or do you still want the...
No, I would like to still keep the motion as is in order to help the group make a presentation to the other cities for funding, which I think they will need.
Okay, I'm going to comment on that motion. I'm going to be supportive of Mr. Fox's motion. I think it's, I have a big, long list here of how the state has taken all our money, and it would all sound kind of pathetic because everybody's suffering, especially the courts. Courts are closing up and down the state, and access to justice is obviously critical to democracy. But we can't keep taking over state functions, and I think it's a very reasonable middle ground to look at after a year how close we are to obtaining that reallocation funding. We have to remember what our core services are, and it's not to provide court funding. It's a very good thing for our residents to have a closer drive, but I really think we can get a lot done in a year, and we can reevaluate in a year. I did listen to the Camarillo City Council meeting, and I think their concerns are very similar to our concerns. The state's been taking the money, but the big thing is they wanted to make sure that after 2 years, the state or the courts don't come back and say, well, now you've funded for $15,000, we need another $10,000 to keep it open. So I think it's a reasonable middle ground to say, a year, and let's see what we can do working together after a year. So we'll have a vote on your motion. Did you have a comment to Ms. Bill of Opinions?
Yeah, I just wanted to remind the council also that when we were threatened with the closure of the East County Jail, we moved heaven and earth in order to keep that one open. And I think this case is absolutely similar to the closing or the potential closure of the East County Jail. So I will.
It's just a difference of a year. So, but okay, all right. And Councilmember Price, do you have a comment to Ms. Bilderl-Pena's motion? No. All right. Vote, please.
The motion fails 1-3.
Mr. Fox?
I'm going to move that the council would appropriate up to $65,000 in support of the plan that was devised by the court to keep the East County courthouse open for 2 days a week, as outlined in the staff report for traffic and I think it was the small business, small claims court. And I'm not going to attach it to the motion, but it's certainly my intent that the other cities in the counties participate in this. I'd like to see at least half of the cities actually get some skin in the game, so to speak. If we're unable to do that, my confidence is the committee that put this together will look at the realities of the situation. But I think Thousand Oaks has been a leader, and we need to maintain that position with respect to our partnership in terms of the regional issues that affect us. I would like to say, just in closing, that while many of the speakers made very persuasive argument, the reality is we're very proud of the court system here in the county, and it's because of the people that are sitting here tonight. I would tell you, if this is Los Angeles, this would never happen in a million years. Because I happen to work in the city of Los Angeles, and I see a different court system, and we're very proud of the court system that we have here, and the relationships and the professionalism of the judges and the attorneys and the court staff. And from my perspective, this is much more about professional relationship and the pride that we have in our court system here in the county than it is about solving the state's issues or bailouts or even driving a few extra minutes or inconvenience. That being said, my comments earlier really were heartfelt. At the end of the day, we were elected to represent and serve the city of Thousand Oaks, and while there has been very good argument about the impacts to our city residents, we are laying people off. We are doing a variety of things here, and for us to endeavor into a long-term program to keep a state function open, I just don't think would be in keeping with what we were elected to do, respectfully said. So with that, my motion would be for 1-year funding and up to $65,000, and that would be it. But the intent certainly is that if there's not at least half the cities in Ventura County, that hopefully this thing will be reevaluated, and that the money would come from a fund identified by the city manager.
Comments to the motion? Councilmember Bill de la Pena?
Obviously, since I was in favor of funding for 2 years, I will be in favor of funding for 1 year minimum. I want to also be on the record that Thousand Oaks is not the only city who has had financial difficulties or layoffs. I believe that Simi Valley had salary cuts across the board of 10% and had to make other drastic cuts in order to have a balanced budget, which is required by law. And I do want to thank you for everyone who has come out tonight to state your case and make your case very convincingly. It was most impressive. And again, I want to stress how impressed I am with your sense of regionalism, which I think is the bigger picture. It is something that we all the communities, not only the East County, but all the communities have to look at and have to keep in mind when making decisions that affect not only our residents here, but also residents across the county. I will, having said that, I will support Mr. Fox's motion.
Councilmember Price?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm in agreement with everything that my council colleagues have said. In particular, I do think that showing that we are willing to commit some skin to the game, as Councilmember Fox pointed out, should go a long way toward convincing other cities to perhaps get into the game as well. I would also suggest that perhaps now that Mr. Siddell has worked tirelessly on putting this thing together over the past many months, or several months actually. It hasn't been many months. He didn't have the luxury of it being many months, but now that he's retired, he has all sorts of time, I'm sure. Huh? And I'm hopeful too that with 1 year, maybe we'll be able to use that to convince the state to step up to the plate and do what's right for the residents of Ventura County. So with that, I would also be in support of the motion.
And I would like to thank all our speakers again today. I really hope that we never have this distinguished group here again. The judges probably belong in the courthouse, and it's very intimidating to have all of you sitting up here. I am going to support the motion. I think Mr. Fox said it all very well. So let's all vote.
Motion carries 4-0.
And we're going to take a break. Or, wait, do we have any? Ms. Noonan is going to announce the closed session.
Yeah.
Yes, will be existing litigation, Laveau versus City of Thousand Oaks, case number 56, 2011, 003956160, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, and it's unlikely I will have anything to report following closed session.
Thank you, Ms. Noonan. And now we will be recessed. Council issues and recommendations follow up on meetings and conferences attended by council members. In the supplemental is Mr. Price's report on the LCC Channel Counties Division meeting on 7/13. Item 13 is city manager reports, and he is all done with his reports. Item 14, we have already done the closed session. There was nothing to report out. And item 15 is public notices. There are none. And finally, item 16 is adjournment. And we are adjourning to our regular meeting on September 11th, 2012. Everybody have a